But yeah, no, welcome guys. Like I said, we're going to do kind of 20, 25 minute talk with Omnia from Kinetic. We're going to learn about Kinetic like we have our other spaces, and then we'll set it up for a more kind of chill talk session. But yeah, Omnia, one of our earliest Hypio supporters. He's got the custom Hypio PFP. One of the few people that does have one, has been kind of ride or die in our community and is building a pretty cool project on Hyperliquid with Kinetic. So yeah, if you want to do a little intro for yourself, Omnia, and what you're doing with Kinetic, you start there.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, Omnia here. Have probably interfaced with, if not everyone here, at least most of you here, over several occasions, several tweet threads, several all right buddies. Uh, but yeah, so I guess quick intro. In the Hyperliquid in May of 2023, so it's been quite some time, and it's been good to see, kick-ass projects like Hypio come and literally kick ass. Um, it's been really cool to kind of see, you guys may see Jeff say this every so often, like the scope 100x several times. So to have seen that played out has been really special. Um, Several of our team, like the Kinetic contributors are on the phone and have been with us through the Hyperliquid trenches, if you will, for quite some time. In the sense that, this is pre everything, pre points, pre token, everything. So yeah, it's been really, really fun to have seen the announcement of the EVM like last April, actually, end of April last year, and now to be cooking like crazy on the EVM, obviously with Hypio, but not just there, but also on the application side, building Kinetic. So yeah, happy to dive into anything in particular, like my background, the team's background, but yeah, I guess super briefly on my side, used to work at a crypto hedge fund as an analyst slash researcher. Then pretty quickly got engulfed by, working across several DAOs. Worked for some pretty cool, prominent DeFi projects for quite some time before starting my own stuff alongside a really fantastic team. Then to, I guess you could say, proprietary trading on Hyperliquid for quite some time now, going on 2 years pretty soon, funny enough, and has led us to, after like, I guess you could say 5 calls a week for 6 months straight about Hyperliquid related matters internally, we decided to actually go for it and actually build something really, really cool, which is what we're talking about today, Kinetic. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now because I could definitely ramble about it, but yeah, for the sake of time.
I think all of us can ramble about for time on Hyperliquid and crypto in general. So
Sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt.
Um, yeah, I think the best way to start is sort of like, we do have obviously people who are super crypto native and absolutely understand Kinetic and LSTs, and it'll be a bit redundant for them. But for the people who aren't, why don't we just dive right into what an LST is, how it works, where do you get the hype from that's liquid staked? What does liquid staked mean? All that kind of basic stuff.
Yeah, great question. So yeah, LST is basically an abbreviation for liquid stake token. So what does liquid stake token actually mean? Uh, Several of you, especially spanning through all the Hypio chats, I've seen ask questions about yield and how to continue compounding or stacking hype. One of the best ways to do this for any network, especially like proof of stake blockchains, is through staking, and this comes with several benefits ultimately. So when you're staking your tokens, you're effectively locking them up to quote unquote secure the network. What this does is basically make it economically really, really expensive for people to attack the network and hijack it, if you will, meaning you would have to basically acquire a ridiculous amount of the supply in order to actually like swing it in your direction. This means that following like governance processes of like, how to hijack a network. I mean, it's happened many times before through several networks, but, um, you know, proof of stake is one of the ways that this is, I guess you could say, avoided, um, by basically just, gathering, I guess you could say in layman's terms, as many people as you possibly can to participate in staking to make it, really expensive or nearly impossible to attack a network. Now, the problem is the first characteristic of staking that I mentioned, which is the fact that you're locking your tokens. So many of you on this right now may actually be staked, and therefore the tokens are unproductive outside of course, securing the network and earning yield, currently just over 2% annually. But there's more that meets the eye, right? Like Lido pioneered liquid staking on Ethereum, where you could effectively deposit your tokens into a smart contract, which would then go and stake the tokens to the network on your behalf. But what they would do is effectively mint you a liquid version of that stake token. Or I guess the simplest way to put it is a receipt. So just like you would have a certificate of deposit at a bank or in the form of an investment somewhere, it's kind of like an on-chain certificate or a receipt that says, hey, yeah, I have such and such amount of hype that's staked. And this is, I guess my receipt token that I can go do whatever the hell I want with. And what does that actually mean? What is the benefit of liquid staking? Well, you can effectively stake your tokens and partake in all the upside with regard to, securing a network, which obviously is good for everyone here's bags, including, people that aren't here as well, everyone involved on Hyperliquid. But you also, essentially, you do retain the yield, number one. Some LSTs enforce I guess you could say a rake or some sort of fee on the staking yield, whereas Kinetic doesn't. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, that's one interesting thing. But most importantly of all is that this LST becomes a money Lego, and more importantly, a good money Lego for Hyperliquid DeFi. And on any network, a good ecosystem is basically anchored by the success of its LST, or most important LST, most liquid and most utilized LST. So yeah, I guess that's a high level way of putting it. If we were to say like liquid staking for dummies, it's basically putting your otherwise idle tokens to work. That's like 7 words.
Yeah. No, it's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, I think it's a lot of info, even for something that it can seem relatively simple for us who, have been in crypto. Just to kind of like rehash. Like, for example, we're probably, hopefully going to have a validator on mainnet imminently. Mm-hmm. So as far as getting the actual hype that's staked, you guys make deals to be able to make that liquid. You guys make deals sort of for liquidity with people who are staking with validators, and you guys don't have your own validator, right?
Yeah, so good question. We actually don't make the deals on the validator side at all, actually. So okay. This is like with regards to validators that get the token delegated to them, meaning that Kinetic effectively acts as like an autonomous, I guess you could say, manager of all of the hype that comes in, right? Where I guess this is just a simple way of putting it, right? Where you could think of the protocol as like this decentralized and completely autonomous set of smart contracts that will take in the hype and then pass it on and delegate it to validators. For example, like let's say the Hypio validator, right? If it meets certain criteria. So these criteria are primarily centered around performance and uptime. If the validator has a good quote unquote score, which people will be able to see publicly, then that validator will be eligible for stake from Kinetic. And it basically aligns the entire ecosystem from, or I guess you could say every participant at the staking level. You align the staker who's interested in yield and security. You align, obviously, like the liquid staking protocol, who's in the business of making sure that your stake is responsibly secured. And then obviously the validator as well, whereas they have a specific incentive to ensure that they're always online, always doing well, not just getting by, right? Because it will be, at least with Kinetic validators, very competitive in the sense that if there's a validator that's kicking your ass, they're going to get your stake, right? So, and we don't care. Like, we could have the best relationship with a validator operator, and they not do well, and that means they don't earn stake, and vice versa. We could hate a validator operator for whatever reason, and if they do well, they're going to get stake. So I hope that makes sense. An LST protocol doesn't necessarily need to be a validator as well, but we are teamed up with Peer 2, which is an institutional validator operator. They're one of Lido's validators, for example, in terms of their experience. They'll be running the Kinetic validator on mainnet. So it just made sense. I mean, it was a good entrance into the ecosystem for them and a way for us to kind of keep validator operations hands off because we want to focus on liquid staking, not running a validator, right? So I hope that makes sense at a high level and even a little bit more depth for those that are savvy with regards to liquid staking and validator operations.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's a great answer too. So you guys are going to have a validator, but you guys get hype in and then you stake it for people and you basically manage that and try to get the yield.
That's right. Yep.
I guess so. There's 2 questions, and they're both tied to yield, and you could probably anticipate both of them. But the first one would be yield on hype itself. At the moment is relatively low compared to the field. You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's not so low if you think that hype's going to go up, right? But
Exactly. Exactly.
it's in general the numbers are quite low. What's your view on that? And I have a couple follow-on questions that you might anticipate, and feel free to answer ahead of time. But just related to the yield question, for staking hype right now.
Yep. I'll put on my tinfoil hat for a second, and and then I'll get back to reality after. But the tinfoil hat explanation is, I personally think, and I think there may be someone on here that may agree, but um, there, if you've followed Hyperliquid for quite some time, and even if you haven't, and you've just kind of backstepped into like what the overall pattern matching has looked like, um, they typically are most fond of the things that people are less interested in. So it's been a really crazy as above so below type experience where what would be considered bearish for another ecosystem some ways, and something to that signals that you shouldn't partake, for example, low yield and staking, oh, it's not worth it, right? This has usually been where Hyperliquid shine in terms of what they actually look for and incentivize. Now that we're in a post points post TGE era, I don't know how they do it. Maybe it comes out of like ecosystem incentives, if that's even something that they do. There's ways about doing that have been commonly done in other ecosystems, which I don't think the Hyperliquid team will do, as displayed by how they haven't laid out how people will earn anything, or if they'll earn anything at all. Um, but yeah, like that's, I guess you could say, a source of edge where ink could be, viewed as that. In other words, what I'm getting at is, right now the yield may look like 2%, but who the fuck knows? Maybe, they're retroactively giving people 5x the staking rewards over the last few months, right? So that's the way of thinking about it, I would say. Especially for those that are like, oh, like, yeah, I'm staked, but the 2% isn't necessarily attractive. I just don't have anything better to do, right? So that's my initial thought on it from a tinfoil hat perspective, right? Like retroactive staking rewards, in my personal opinion. Um, and by the way, like, for those that may think, oh, like, you've been on Hyperliquid for long, etc. Like, we've only ever spoken with one public-facing like team member from the Hyperliquid team, or contributor base, and yeah, like, in other words, no, as you all may know at this point, like, no special relationships around information being passed on to one or another. We've seen, it doesn't matter like who they are, like in terms of what protocol is being built. Nobody gets advanced information of any kind. So this is me purely speculating. And then secondly, in more, I guess you could say, interestingly, with regards to like the real world, and how things are actually, like, say that like 2% staking yield was that the way it is forever, right? Um, most ecosystems, are used to 10, 15, 20+% inflation rates on an annual basis. And this makes it exciting for a little bit, but it's usually kind of this kiss of death for ecosystem moment, but it really kills you later on because you're inflating the share of the token. And this is for, this is like, it claims to be for network security. And, you really, it's just to keep people incentivized to participate. Whereas on Hyperliquid, they haven't really had to do that. They've never specified what percentage of the outstanding supply will go to staking rewards. So this could change at literally any given time at the whim of a button. So anyway, I wanted to highlight that as like 2% not necessarily being a bad thing. And that's where LSTs like Kinetic come in, because it can help you boost your yield in so many ways. So yeah, I'll leave it there. But that's two scenarios as to like my thoughts, and thoughts others share around the current yield,
Yeah.
if you will.
No, I appreciate you doing the conspiracy part, because I was gonna do it. Yeah, I mean that's kind of I think a lot of people are thinking that might be in the mix. Like, personally, I think, if it is 2%, it's 2% of hype at 13.4. Like, a lot of us who are here, whatever, not financial advice, but like we all are quite bullish on hype, and we think hype should be worth a lot more. So like, I'll take 2%
Exactly.
personally, with the amount that I don't plan to sell, you know what I mean, anytime soon. So it's like, I take that. And if you can make it a liquid token where I could sell it, there you go. You know what I mean? So it solves a lot of problems there. Yeah, I was going to go, I guess we can kind of make this a two-part question. But the last part, the only thing that you didn't hit was the potential for capacity to capture value from MEV on Hyper EVM in a world where it gets larger. And then also, yeah, assuming that the yield is sort of tacking onto what you're saying, let's say, for example, there's a hype airdrop, or let's say you're staking to our validator or your validator or whoever validator, and you get some kind of airdrop from that. How would that value accrue to stakers? Would it go directly to them based on their stake, or Oh, that so that and the MEV
Yep.
question. I know I'm making you talk a lot, but
No, man. I mean, I could definitely yap, so I trust me, it's no problem. So, um, yeah, I'll probably touch on the MEV side first. So it's not something that we've announced officially on the Kinetic side, but um, yeah, like why, right? Like so many people may view this as like a very easy marketing grab, as you may have seen others go for. But MEV is a very interesting topic on Hyperliquid. It's something that is pretty much completely unknown at the moment in terms of its feasibility. There's some assumptions that we've been able to make. Uh, Kinetic has a full-time MEV engineer contributing as well, so like it's an area that we're taking extremely serious. But it is something that we also are realistic about, right? We've done tons of cross research with other ecosystems and how their MEV is kind of, let's just say, possible and how it works. And based off of this research, we've been able to kind of extrapolate what we think it'll look like on Hyperliquid, but that's for another time. So with that said, there are two things that are needed in order to determine uh, how MEV is possible and how it'll then be able to be extracted, and how this becomes really interesting for kHYPE stakers. The first thing is the consensus mechanism. So HyperBFT, which is a total black box at the moment, needs to be open source, or there needs to be information available and access that currently doesn't exist today, right? Like that's a given. This is something that is very well known. But the second part too is the execution client. So once this is something that's open source and revealed, and something that we have, more open and public data available about, we'll be able to then build a very interesting solution, which I shouldn't really speak about right now. But the point being that that is something that we're going to be focused on. And while it's not a buzzword that we're currently using, kHYPE will absolutely capture MEV yield when it is possible on HyperVM. So yeah, that's that. And then I'm sorry, can you remind me of the second question that you brought up?
the second. Sorry, my mic was plugging up. Second question was about the potential for extra non-canonical yield from the APR. Like, let's say you were to get an APR from a validator that, like, not APR, you were to get some kind of airdrop of a non-hype token or a hype token, from the hype team, from one of the validators that you deemed worth
Yeah.
staking to. How exactly does that get passed on? Is it just like linear to hype, kHYPE stakers or their
Yeah,
share? And
great question. Yeah, great question. It would basically be proportional. So, it would be as if you were staking directly with that validator as well. The good news is that the way accounts work on Hyperliquid allow us to basically be included into airdrops like that, just distribute to our holders. So we don't really have a concern around that. So unless there, I guess you could say something explicit around like somebody not wanting to include kHYPE holders, which, we should, our job is to make it so exciting for other ecosystem participants or people who want to reward hype stakers to basically never leave out kHYPE stakers, right? Or like never try to go out of their way to exclude them. The idea is it's not something that we're worried about in terms of being able to technically pass on that yield. So yeah, it will work simply in the sense that I guess you could think of it how, have you seen the Azuki airdrop and how that was done? Like same exact way. It would just be distributed by account proportionally to how much of the kHYPE stake pool is effectively held by a user. So if I hold 1%, then I'm going to proportionally receive 1% of whatever the airdrop is, right? So that's basically the best way to put it.
awesome. I guess it's time to move into some of the more granular details as far as like when do you guys think you're launching,
Yep.
all that.
Good question. Yeah. So we've been asked, even by some here, like we've been asked like to do speaking engagements and like community activations and stuff like this, and we haven't really felt uh like it was the right time to do it until right about now, where we're anywhere between aggressively 2 weeks to conservatively from launch. Kinetic will be the most audited protocol on HyperEVM when it goes live. We're going under 4 audits, so 2 of them have already completed. The third one is beginning this week, and the fourth one subsequently. So yeah, it's security is not something that we're taking lightly at all. If we're going to be managing billions of dollars worth of hype stake, then it's not something that we're interested in sparing a dollar on. So yeah, that is, I guess you could say, the most important thing. On top of what you had been mentioning about or like other non-canonical forms of yield, for example, in the form of airdrops and stuff like that. So as like DeFi nerds ourselves on the team, uh, we have really thought this through in the sense that how can we get people to basically take their kHYPE and turn it into this vehicle to kind of get exposure to the entire ecosystem through one asset, right? And that asset is kHYPE. So on launch, everybody will notice that we'll have a specific page where people can deposit their kHYPE, and one of the largest, if not the largest, vault managers and forms of vault infrastructure in the space, Veda Labs, haven't officially announced this, but I guess you could consider this being that. Will effectively be running a vault that allows for kHYPE stakers to deposit it and then get exposure to several other protocols at once in one place. This is something I posted about earlier today, funny enough, so it's funny we're talking about it. So what does that look like? This looks like a looping strategy or leverage staking yield, Lend, Hyperdrive, several other protocols like LP on Curve, for example, LP on Laminar. So imagine like one place that you can basically get exposure to several other protocols on top of whatever yield it is that you're printing via interest rates or swap fees, like all in one place. So the idea would be that's why like 2% is something that you forget about. And our job at Kinetic is to make it so compelling for people to liquid stake because they're leaving so much money and so much yield on the table that they don't see native staking making sense in terms of their particular individual strategy. Like it should be liquid staking, just like on Ethereum, like the vast majority of stake, or like at least a sizable amount of the stake, enough where it becomes a centralization risk over the last few years, has effectively been pushed through Lido. So one way that we combat that quote unquote potential centralization risk is by not handpicking our validator selection. So for example, like we may be tight, right? Like we love Hypio. Obviously I'm rocking the custom Hypio, but if the Hypio validator is horrible, like it's not up to me to say, hey, this is going to be like out of the realm of possibility in terms of you guys getting stake, or anybody on our team for that matter. Stake Hub, which is an autonomous protocol that we've developed that scores all these validators, will be able to effectively assess them all, compute a score that you'll be able to see publicly. So it could be a Hypio flex in the future at some point, or any validator could flex their score. And based on this score, that's how they'll accrue their stake. So that's a way we combat what's happened with Lido, where they have to basically handpick every single one of their validators, KYC them, and vet them in many other ways. And yeah, like I guess that's a good segue and good place to stop, because otherwise I will continue rambling. But I hope this makes sense. Once again, for the more savvy stakers out there, and for those that aren't savvy, I guess the best way to think about it is our job is to make sure that your stake doesn't land in the hands of those who could potentially lose it. And what does this mean? Like on networks like Hyperliquid or any other proof of stake network, if validators don't do a good job or don't comply with network rules, they could potentially be what's called slashed or lose a portion of their stake. This isn't something live on Hyperliquid at the moment, but in the future that could change. So we're acting as if it's already live today. So yeah, I hope that helps with context on multiple fronts.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think you should plan for where you're going to be, right? So just the same way you're planning for the potential for MEV, you should be planning for, having a ton of stake and being a huge part of securing the network and having to indulge that responsibly, right? So
Exactly.
how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Oh man, very John Wick 4 coded. But yes.
Yeah. One question, feel free to no answer it, but a lot of people are going to ask about the incentives and the potential of a token and all of that, and anything you want to talk about as far as incentives for people staking and whatnot.
Sure. I guess, yeah, the only thing that would make sense to say is that the beauty of Hyperliquid is that everything is on chain. And if you have the eyes to see it, then, more power to you. But that's basically where I'll leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there, I guess, typically around now we kind of switch into a more open format where we might bring on a couple other speakers for the last section. But before we do that, if there's any sort of, I feel like you answered everything that I have questions about. Basically, this is going to be a liquid staking token that you can trade on the Hyper EVM. I assume that's going to be tradable on Hypercore at some point soon. Yeah. And that, and you went very in depth. Luckily the space is recorded, so if it was too much for some people, you could re-listen to certain parts.
Or comment with questions or whatever. Yeah.
But feel free to request soon if you're somebody who has questions you want to ask Omnia, or just talk about Hyperliquid and crypto with us. But Omnia, before we do that, any kind of parting for this segment thoughts you want to talk about Kinetic and why people should do it beyond what you said or
Yeah,
anything?
it's a good question. The best thing, or I guess you could say the best possible recap, and what we, as Kinetic contributors would want Hyperliquid enjoyers to know about Kinetic is that as the native ecosystem option, and what we mean by that ultimately is that Kinetic won't exist anywhere else. Um, we're not in the business of grant farming or being built for any other chain or modular in the sense that you can go and plug the same system in anywhere. It's purpose built for Hyperliquid and Hyperliquid only, and this will be transparent, and everybody will be able to see and verify this. Um, the good news is like we understand the needs of stakers as stakers ourselves, right? We understand the needs of traders as traders ourselves. And we understand the needs for DeFi as DeFi participants ourselves. So that's why Kinetic has been totally not only purpose built for Hyperliquid, but for Hyperliquid DeFi that follows what Hyperliquid has already done. And to give an example of this, on Hypercore, as you mentioned, there is going to be a kHYPE USDC pair that people will be able to trade in and out of, as well as various kHYPE hype pools on certain AMMs, such as like Curve or Laminar, and any AMM technically could support. All of your favorite money markets will be integrating kHYPE from day zero. So, as I mentioned, Hyperlend, Felix, Hyperdrive, Hyperfi, there'll be several. So everybody here will have options to basically partake in the quote unquote kHYPE ecosystem in many ways. There'll be bridge support from Wormhole, D-Bridge, possibly even Layer Zero. So it's going to be very, very integrated from, like I said, from the onset, so that it's extremely seamless for people to come from other ecosystems into kHYPE directly too, and to come and experience the rest of the HyperEVM ecosystem, whether it's, buying niqabs, from the Hypio collection, or, aping ridiculous clips of Buddy, right? So that's basically it, in terms of the best way to put it, and, the Kinetic nativity compared to its counterparts.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, once I've been bugging the pseudo swap guys and Liquid Loot to deploy soon, but pseudo should be deploying very soon. Uh, who knows? It should be very soon. But
Fair enough.
we're gonna have our trade like our pools in like Buddy type, and like once K Hype comes, we're gonna have LST pools too. So we'll definitely have a K Hype
Hell yeah.
pool, so you can
Yeah,
sell your Hypio for K Hype and buy Hypios with K Hype and all that. So
that's right.
and I'm
Yeah,
sure Loot.
exactly.
I
I
think
mean,
Loot will implement that too, just natively in the marketplace at some point. I would
that's
imagine.
right. Yep. We've chatted with the Loot team about that too. So you will soon be able to list and bid in kHYPE as well. So our goal is to essentially ensure that nobody needs to exit their kHYPE for whatever reason. So if it's a liquidity reason, it's covered. If it's an integration reason, it's covered. Um, and this also includes like utility, like for example, being able to use kHYPE on SudoSwap and setting up a pool. So when SudoSwap came out, like, I think we were like the 19th biggest user at the time, like when we were doing NFT stuff a while ago, like NFT finance stuff. And yeah, like we became pretty proficient in like utilizing pseudo pools. So I know I've chatted with you about it quite a bit, but I'm very, very excited to open up some Hypio kHYPE pools and utilize them myself. So yeah, I mean, again, the point being, as Hyperliquid is built for traders by traders, same thing here with Kinetic, for DeFi nerds by DeFi nerds, and making it simple for people that aren't really savvy with DeFi at all. So that's the real balance and challenge, and we're up for it. So I hope that helps contextually.
Absolutely. Yeah, what at this point, anybody, we're in the sort of the latter part of the space. So anybody who has questions for Omnia or me, I guess, anybody that wants to talk about this stuff, feel free to come on. Until then, I guess let's just talk about general stuff. Like how do you feel about hype, price action, all the whale wars, Hyperliquid, crypto, Mega ETH funding the NFT ecosystem of Hyperliquid when they don't even have working product? Anything you want to talk about?
Silence mainnet NFT collection, a broken test net is speak. But yeah, obviously there's going to be a ridiculous amount of FUD from Hyperliquid has literally crushed the souls and hopes and dreams and aspirations of many, many protocols that still don't exist today. HyperEVM, in many ways, for those that don't, I guess you could say, see it this way, is in its infancy. So you can expect a lot of friction. You can expect a lot of things to change for the better, ideally. But this has always proven, again, not financial advice. I'm talking as like a homie, right? Like this has always been a proven battleground for uh, asymmetric returns, right? So whether it's owning Hypios or it's owning Buddy, like aside from the cultural element, which make it hilarious, the idea is that just simply being involved at such an interesting stage, and even later on too, right, makes it, one of a kind ecosystem aside from the already existing product offering that sets it apart. So it doesn't matter what these chains do. It doesn't matter what Mega Eat does. It doesn't matter what Monad does. It doesn't matter who movement bribes in the U.S. government. They will never be able to amount to what Hyperliquid has done because they are all coming from a place of, pre-product hype and community building around, farming plushies and shit, or like being baited into minting NFTs for, ridiculous prices for something that they can't even, use. Whereas Hyperliquid has completely flipped the script with an app-centric approach. Some even call it an app chain today, which in many ways was true, but after the release of the EVM is no longer true. So it's the weird paradigm shifting. I mean, you have to understand, like, these are, we're competing against people who have literally made their livelihoods over the last few years talking shit about systems and doing whatever they possibly can to raise VC money and acquire people from already existing blockchain solutions to build, a regurgitated version with slightly better specs of what already exists, right? And for Hyperliquid to come along and really mess that up, as you can imagine, has pissed a lot of people off. So it makes it that much sweeter winning. But the job's obviously not finished. So the idea is to ensure that we really, really like put a hole in the rest of the competition by ensuring that Hyperliquid DeFi truly melts faces. And there's no better way or funner way to do that without, the community. So yeah, and by community, I mean, obviously like fellow retards in the Hypio community and all the shit that goes on in terms of like random shit that lands in our wallets that we check on Drip Trade or anywhere else, right? So this has always been a very interesting, I don't know, it feels like a holy war in some ways, obviously at the intersection of blockchains. So yeah, I hope this gives people a little bit more comfort as they're going about their hyper EVM discovery, because yeah, it's very, very hard, or I mean, in some ways impossible to match what Hyperliquid's done. I mean, and this is a combination of so many things, right? Market timing, community formation, like product development. Have to realize like other ecosystems are actually in need of paying people to go and do half of the stuff, if that's already been done on Hyperliquid. I mean, we have NFT marketplaces competing against each other on Hyperliquid, right? Whereas other ecosystems have to pay OpenSea like token grants to go and to deploy there, right? Or have already minted some crazy mooner that's only popular within like the 7 people that exist on whatever chain it is, right? So I hope that helps. Obviously, there's a conglomeration of like many, many months, if not years, of thoughts as they develop. So if it sounds like I'm rambling, if it sounds that there's like a lot of anger built up around some of the way other ecosystems talk shit about Hyperliquid, don't mistake it for that. It's actually pure hilarity to me, and I hope you could see in my replies that that's the case. So
No, I could agree more, man. Like, I was noticing today, you're talking about the NFTs that like people are king making on these chains. I saw Steady Teddy's whitelist. I'm sure everybody knows Steady Teddy's.
yeah,
It's down from like $3,000 to like 500, $600
oh fuck,
on secondary market, and that was just kind of fun. I was expecting that to be a major cook, but
yeah,
anyways,
they have dank content too. Like I was like, I actually followed them at some point, and I mean, like I have. Since being around since like Barachain was formed as an idea to seeing like what it is now, I was like, wow, like this is actually something cool. But Hypio, for example, giving people a free liquid 50x pretty much for just a couple of clicks, and not everybody, not absolutely FSH nuke style, in search of the puddle to destroy type of vibe, right? Like it's been very interesting to see just the structural differences and the mental differences between the participants on Hyperliquid and Barachain. It's a very different animal. Again, Barachain is just one example. I mean, got Monad, like people that you have like at least 100 to 200,000 people who log into that Discord on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis and like praise a purple plushie of a chain that doesn't exist on a testnet that broke within 24 hours of existing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolute crazy work.
And they're pumping testnet numbers on Mega ETH. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, this isn't really a dig anywhere else that's uncalled for. It's just very, very interesting that you have the loudest people on crypto Twitter that are non-hyperliquid aligned, I guess you could say, that are talking the most shit, and it's very, very hard for bag bias not to come through. And yes, hype holders do have a shit ton of bag bias, whether it's Hypios or whether you're the biggest all right buddy token holder, right? Like it doesn't matter. It's just bag bias is everywhere. It's just more along the lines of objectively, like what are the key differences, and some people just choose to not respect those objective key differences, and it's all coming out through the product, right? Like Hyperliquid sneezes a $3 or $4 billion volume day. I don't know if any of these upcoming, I'm finna bridge L2s are ever gonna do a $1 billion, trading dollars though. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know about that, but anyway, I digress, and I hope the point is very, very clear.
Well, it makes me think about sort of like you were talking about the inversion of stuff that like would be bearish elsewhere, like especially like for example, my project we were talking about like we did a 50x or whatever, but not to shade bear chain or whatever, like people made a lot of money off of the rebased bears and all of that, but like
Yeah, yeah,
this is basically people kind of like propping up these things so that they could sell to others and they could sell coins to others. Whereas like for us, I know like a lot of the early mentors, 100% I know are some of my good friends who are pilled on Hyperliquid,
yeah.
and like they minted and they held, and then they kept buying at 4.5 and points.
Oh man, I suffer from that
too. It's like whatever, but
yes, my average entry has absolutely been fucked up by all the rescuing I've been doing from the base parasite chain to rescuing to hyper.
we'll try not to make you exit liquidity on you. I'll do my best.
Yeah, no, don't worry.
But
Don't worry about it, buddy.
the point I was yeah, all right, but
All right, buddy.
the point I was making
All
was
right,
just
buddy.
that like on these other chains, your steady Teddy's whitelist costs $3,000 or whatever. For Hyperliquid, like
man.
NFT that's like $75 can actually genuinely send to thousands of dollars, and it's not
Oh man.
like well, the team isn't like short term view, like, and it's not just us. It's just an example of like in general, teams aren't short term like, oh, I need to get this out before the market crashes because market conditions are good right now and it's not good, what I mean, maybe
Yeah,
2 weeks or whatever. There's not this like short term, like we need to get our mint out, we need to get our max extract value.
Yeah,
We're not minting an NFT for $3,000.
we trying to max extract from this.
Yeah, literally. Oh, that's the vibe on all these chains, bro. Like Mega ETH minting a 1 ETH NFT for tokens that are vested over time for like, that it's like a bunny that like nobody would actually want. Like it's just like the vibe is so different. And I think the thing that's so cool about Hyperliquid is like it is such an inversion of this like testnet model where it's like they basically ship the testnet in prod and they're updating it, but there's real money on it. There is, and that's why the NFTs have done well. Is that that's one of the only primitives that really works in this environment until people like you come in with kHYPE and other sort of protocols launch.
Yep.
But as you said, that is always the not financial advice, but like low key financial advice. Like in general, it is like to be early to something in crypto is the only time you can get those asymmetric. I mean, what do the KOLs do? They try to get early allos of coins and sell and dump them on your head. Like that is the whole point of this game, is to be early to something that's real.
Yeah.
And we have such a fascinating opportunity in terms of like you have basically the top revenue generating protocol that isn't like Tron or whatever, something like that. On the one side, and this token that's it's doing quite strong relative to the market. Yeah. And then on the other side, you have all of this infra and all of these projects that are going to have their own coins, that are going to have their own incentives, are going to have their own rewards. Yeah. And whether it's just having bought, liquid stake type at 13 and letting that accrue value both from the yield and from type itself going up, hopefully, or whether it's buying NFTs and getting money from the NFTs going up and then getting money from the marketplaces giving you points. And it's not just that, it's going to be, Hyperlend and all these other lending products. There's so many of these. Right now, Hyperswap and Kitten Swap, people are farming those. And it's like, there's really not that many people here yet. And that's the most bullish situation. You don't want to be too early to something that like maybe will never get traction, but you have a good sense that traction is going to come because you have on the other side this massive vehicle that has the most traction of basically anything. So it really reminds me of like Solana in the early days. Even Solana now doesn't really have this robust DeFi structure that you would think that it would have.
Solana DeFi is absolutely shit. I think the only reason it had a second wind is because meme coins became interesting and people looked for liquidity on them. So you have mostly money markets deriving the vast majority of their borrow volume is either from shitters or Sol obviously itself, and Liquid stake that Sol. Um, yeah, I mean, there's
The liquid
obviously a
space
lot.
soul got really interesting because of the MEV and the use.
Exactly, yeah. Which Gito pioneered, and obviously this is kind of a it's going to be a very disputed, uh, I guess you could say, piece of land on Hyperliquid, and that's okay. Like that's the good news is that's good, right? Like we definitely don't shy away from the competition on the MEV front. All we can worry about, and like we've taken obviously a lot of inspiration. I mean, who hasn't, right, from the team on this, which is just we're going to build the best possible solution, obviously going to be as integrated as possible everywhere. Um, but we're not doing this for altruistic reasons. We're doing it because we believe that Kinetic is going to be a winner for every single person involved. And I don't mean this from any sort of price action perspective. I mean this from more along the lines of, you should, like, no serious protocol will emerge on Hyperliquid without integrating kHYPE, just like you don't see any serious protocol on Ethereum come to life without integrating staked ETH, right, from Lido. So that is the pure vision and goal around uh, Kinetic as a whole. And this means that for our stakers, going to bat for you on preferred rates on money markets. This means, ensuring that even if you're a kHYPE staker and you want to, trade the shit out of, Buddy, that there's sufficient liquidity on order books and AMMs to do that. This means that if you're a kHYPE staker and you don't want to exit your kHYPE, but you want to buy that, super hot fire, red scimitar Nicabio that just got floored, you could do that. So that's that's the most important part to us. Not only because it's the most interesting and gives the LST more utility, but because it's hilarious and it's super fun. So it's something that we wish we could do today, but obviously not possible for the next few weeks. We're itching to get it live for everyone. And again, to really quickly circle back to the point on yield and to properly answer your question around price action, I think this is going to sound like copium to any retard who tunes into this and doesn't really resonate with everything that we've discussed for the last, I don't know, 45 minutes to almost an hour now. But to be specific, Hyperliquid is really the only asset on the market today. Like, not even Bitcoin, not even Ethereum, not Solana, obviously, not really anything else. Is the only asset on the market you could kind of be happy about it being at a lower price than it was yesterday or the day before or the month before, because you have a true price insensitive buyer, which is the Hyperliquid Assistance Fund, that's just removing supply from the market at any given time, right? For over 1.5% of circulating supply to be removed on a monthly basis at the volume that we were seeing over the last few weeks is absolutely unheard of. I mean, like, unheard of in the sense that, like, that's literally not existed outside of something that wasn't a blatant scam, right? So yeah, it's a very, very special place to be in from a price action perspective. It is extremely obviously reflexive. There was a huge wealth event, and nobody can spin it to be any different than what it actually was. And I really only hope for the traders out there that for people that are trading the short-term PA, I hope you're either an S tier trader, or you're okay with the trade-off of potentially having less hype by the end of it if you believe that you're prophetic on the short-term hype PA, because there will be a day of reckoning where shit goes to zero and hype has a proper re-rating. So yeah, I mean, those are my real, I guess you could say, encapsulated thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's great. Kind of following on to that, like, I really felt what you were saying about, like, it's not altruistic, like you're building something that you feel like deserves to exist and is like something that the market is going to feel deserves to exist, and
There is no solution
for you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it's not a charity. Like, that's how I feel about, what we're doing. Like, our project's not a charity. You know what I mean? It's here to help people win on Hyperliquid, and like everybody hopefully makes money from the opportunity, whether it's the NFT or whatever. But there's a lot of people who I think are noticing Hyperliquid, and NFTs are a great example of it. Of like, there's some play going on here, whether it's us or Hypers or something else, and they're planning to drop an abstract and they're coming over here, and it's like,
oh man,
like, no, I don't think that they really get it. The reason why I bring it up is, like, what does it mean to you when you think about, like, Hyperliquid as, like, the future finance meme or the house of finance? Like, where do you see Hyperliquid going? I can say, like, just, I've made you talk a lot, so I'll explain a little bit about what I think about it. But the reason, like I made the project because I'm just genuine. Like, I was on Hyperliquid for 1.5 years. I got good airdrop. I'm super bullish on the platform even before the airdrop.
Yep.
And I was like, let's get people to realize, like, what the fuck is going on here and why this is so different from everything else. And, like, we can compare the Solana, stake and reward. Like, Solana, part of why this thing word is so great is the inflation is crazy, and that's
Exactly.
that sugar high is going to end, and it's ending right now. That's why it's below 130, even though it's still like one of the most popular kind of retail chains. Um, but Hyperliquid sort of takes that the other way around. Like we've said, a lot of these inversions that might be bearish for these like short-term retention, but it's not going to have the same kind of inflation over a long period of time, which is a disciplined approach. And then you also have this disciplined approach of, it's a big boy team that isn't like worried about, attention and marketing to the same extent. They're working on shipping a product that people actually need and want to use. And I think they're building the foundation for being able to trade basically any kind of asset. People are going to be making front ends to trade, even could go down to like on-chain stocks and commodities at
That's right.
the furthest right tail end of it. Um, on this platform that's super fast, super performant, whether it's going to be hypercore or hyper EVM, like TBD, maybe it bridges through hyper EVM, it gets traded on hypercore, like we'll see.
Yeah.
But but
The good
that's
news
sort
is
of
it
the
doesn't
vision that I
matter which
see.
one
It's like
it
it
is.
really has, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's the only project that I see. ETH was kind of the vision for that, but I think Hyperliquid is the one that has this laser focused vision on being like, oh, we could be this. We could actually be the house of finance. We could
Yeah.
be that crypto thing that realizes the vision that everybody thought once
That's
basically
right.
ETH came out and started doing interesting stuff with crypto post Bitcoin.
That's right. And Hyperliquid's a team of 13 if they haven't grown it by any more than when they last stated, right? So you don't need a an army of woke tards in the Ethereum Foundation and like planning their next Cancun event, to get shit done. And that's Hyperliquid is, as I mentioned the other day, it is the biggest fuck you and the biggest middle finger that has ever existed to probably anything outside of Bitcoin in the space. And it doesn't matter what Toasted Bread or anybody else likes to say about its distribution or comparing some of the cultural initiatives like Hypio to. It really doesn't matter. There's absolutely nothing that could take away from it because it's an objective, I guess you could say truth, right? And an objective state. There's nothing that changes that. So, yeah, with that being said, I think it's going to be a very, very interesting year for Hyperliquid. It doesn't matter if, all of the bear tards were right and, everything's as over as it may feel for some people in the short term. It really doesn't matter. This was a very, very calculated decision for each and every single contributor to the Kinetic team. Will exist for as long as Hyperliquid exists. And that's literally the statement. That's the flag that we've planted on Hyperliquid. And we're very, very excited to show everybody that in a couple weeks' time when we go live here. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very fun. I look very much forward to obviously all the Hypios and other enthusiasts and enjoyers to join us there and to hit us with any questions and to inform people about liquid staking and to allow people to kind of juice up and multiply their yield in many, many ways that they would have never thought possible. One of the most exciting parts is people who are learning about DeFi. Like there are people here who have zero fucking clue about how DeFi works, let alone how they're going to take their hype and mint kHYPE and then go deposit on Felix and then go crazy with that, right? So it's a very, very exciting time. And yeah, just let us cook. Let's just leave it at that.
No, it is. That's why we every project that we have on here, it's like explain it to somebody who has no idea what it is because people who do know, they don't really need the space. I mean, I'm sure it's informative for the space for people who do know, but like, they know what an LST is, they know the deal, and they know many of the answers and stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
It's still interesting, but it's for the people who don't know, and that is how we grow this pie of people who are engaged with all of this is to educate people.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be funny. Like I think a lot of people here would be very, very, very surprised how many huge institutions are on Hyperliquid and like actually very fond of the Hypio community. I mean, we're talking like multi-billion-dollar institutions. We're talking about institutions that do material percentages of global trade volume in their own respective niche per day that are like, yeah, that's a sick Hypio, when we enter a chat, for example. So it's very much erring on the side of a cultural revolution and a renaissance for DeFi. And I really, really pray that everybody here kind of takes it as such and realizes, how fun this is going to, how fun it has been, obviously, but how fun it's going to be. And yeah, it couldn't be a more exciting time, honestly. So yeah, I guess that's the best way to kind of cap it off in terms of my personal thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think that honestly, I think that's a great spot for us to kind of wrap it off. So I really appreciate you coming on, Mia Puts. Thanks for coming hang out with us too.
Yeah,
I think you did a great job representing kHYPE and why people would want to stake their hype with you guys and why do you need a liquid staked? token. And, for me, I just get more and more excited about the future of all this. And I can't wait to see not just Kinetic, but everybody who's
Yeah.
building stuff and taking their time with it and realizing that there's no rush,
Yeah.
just get it done right. And we're really in such early days with all this.
Yeah, and there's a couple of badass
Exciting.
builders on the line too who are going to be doing things that are pivotal for kHYPE at its adoption as well. Like, Felix, for example, or Neko. Like this, it's going to be very, very exciting what happens next, and it's really right around the corner. So I'm personally, I know it sounds really sadistic, but I'm very much personally enjoying all the shit people are slinging at Hyperliquid, like fees or small block, big block, gas limit related shit. Like, it's very, very funny because I just very much look forward to the crickets later. That's about it.
It is, dude. No, it's like take the screenshots and then dude. When we had our mint day, we stalled for like an hour or like 45 minutes,
Yeah,
middle of it,
yeah,
and all these people DM me, and it's like people still make memes about it. Like the things they were saying to me, like mint half of it on Hyperliquid, close the mint here, cut the bit
yeah,
price, blah blah blah. And when it was
yeah.
done, I just sent all of them K-pop gifts for like an hour straight. I wasn't even focusing on the mint out. I was just spiting all these people, and they're like, all right, like fair play. And
Silent
that's how it's
Hypio.
going to be with Hyperliquid. Yeah.
Yeah, base NFT mentor has advice for the devs.
Guy who couldn't afford a 0.025 min has a question for the dev.
Oh man.
Um, yeah. So anyway, thank you guys so much for coming. Oh, also it reminds me, we were talking about builders and Hyperliquid. We've been making the HWO Capital kind of group chat. That's basically the final set of
That's
formation, or it's
turbo
nearly
builders.
done. And then, yeah, it's a fun chat already,
Oh man.
and we're going to move forward with some of the stuff with that. But also, the HWO Builders chat is coming very quickly, and for that, you have to be a Hypio holder, and you have to be working on a project like Kinetic or many other projects. You do have to be working on a real project, guys. Don't be like having a GitHub and like a little tiny game or something that you can do for a certain 2 hours. It's for people who are seriously trying to build. And I think that's going to be a great chat too for everybody sort of networking who may not be networked, or we'll also be sharing some of our resources, whether it's the guy who's helping us with merch and help us with content. So for teams that might need help with that, or just to connect and then have a Hypio space with teams where you guys are re-talking shit to each other. I don't know. It'll be funny. So we'll see.
Oh yeah. Sounds good. And if anyone has like Kinetic hat PFP Hypios, like I'm like I remember after Mint, like during reveal, I was DMing. Like, there may be some people here who I've reached out to that have Kinetic hats, so like I'm very keen on that because I think we were gonna do like there's alt traits that have formed like niqabs, for example. So we may want to do like a Kinetic hat chat, for example. So if you have one that you just don't rep, like please let us know. There's several Kinetic contributors here, like at least three others besides myself, who are on the space. So feel free to DM any of us, and yeah, Kinetic.
Yeah, funny fact about the Kinetic hat. It wasn't necessarily planned this way, but the Kinetic hat, the Hyperswap hat, and the Hyperlend hat are all quite rare.
Yeah, they are, which is so funny.
Yeah, the three of them, like I think, are going to be some of the biggest DApps, at least as far as I
Yeah,
can tell right now.
yeah.
So that's pretty funny. It's pretty funny that it worked out that way. You know what I mean?
I
Like on the other
there's
end,
one
creator are pretty common.
there's one Kinetic hat Felix T-shirt that I love, and yeah, I whoever has that, like, try not to list it.
Yeah, they're all pretty like cabal.
Because I will.
It seems people do not let them go. The Hyperland hats are like nobody sells Hyperland hats. It's crazy.
Yeah, man, crazy, crazy. So yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anyway,
Thank
this
you
has
for
been really
coming.
cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of
Thanks, man.
fun. Omnia puts everybody who came and listened. We will probably have another space with another protocol next week. So come check it out. This space is recorded. The link's in the Discord and on the Twitter. But yeah, have a good day, guys. Hope you guys have a good rest of the week.
All right, buddy.
All right, buddy.